There is a harsh truth that most people are never told. Discipline is not what's holding you back, it's what's trying to save you from the life you are slowly accepting. I want you to rethink something, not about big goals, not about distant dreams, but the promises you made to yourself. How many times have you said, starting tomorrow, I'll change. Next week, I'll be more serious. This time I'll really do it. But then what happens? You turn off the alarm. You delay another day. You ignore something important just because you don't feel like it today. And you think it's small, but it's not. Every time you do that, you're not just missing an action. You're breaking something far more important. Your trust in yourself. Most people see discipline as a battle, something forced, something that takes away freedom. But I'll tell you what very few people understand. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. It's how you tell yourself without words that, I deserve to become better. I deserve to keep my word. I deserve to build a life of value. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 10 principles of discipline, not to force you to change in a day, but to help you see discipline in a completely different way. A way that once you understand it, you won't have to force discipline anymore. You'll start living with discipline naturally and stay until the end, because principle number 7 can completely change how you see your own future. Principle 1, discipline is self-respect. I want you to imagine a very simple situation. You have a friend, someone who constantly promises you and then breaks those promises. They say they'll be on time, but never are. They say they'll help you, but disappear when you need them. They say they'll change, but next week, they do the same thing again. How would you feel? At first, maybe you understand. Then, you start to doubt. And eventually, you stop trusting them, not because they're bad, but because they don't keep their word. Now, I want you to be a little honest with yourself. How many times have you done that to yourself? You say, tomorrow I'll wake up early, but the next morning you turn off the alarm. You say, this week I'll focus on work, but then you let your phone pull you in for hours. You say, I'll change, but then you don't. And every time that happens, something very small occurs inside you. But it's not small. You are teaching yourself that, my words have no value. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it. And over time, that feeling grows. That's why some people look very confident on the outside, but inside, they're full of doubt. Not because they lack ability, but because they've broken their word to themselves too many times. I've observed this for many years. People who are truly disciplined are not those who are stronger than you. They are simply people who don't allow themselves to break their word to themselves too many times. They understand something most people overlook. Discipline is not forcing yourself to do hard things. Discipline is building a trustworthy relationship with yourself. Every time you do what you said, no matter how small, you send a signal inward, I am someone I can trust. And every time you don't, you also send a signal, I'm not sure I can rely on myself. The problem is you carry that relationship with you everywhere. You can't leave it. You can't avoid it. You wake up with it. You live with it. You go to sleep with it. And the quality of that relationship determines almost everything in your life. How you work, how you face difficulties, how you pursue your goals. Everything starts with whether you trust yourself. This is where everything changes. I don't want you to see discipline as a to-do list. I want you to see it as a deposit into your self-respect account. You say you'll read 10 pages and you do it. You just made a deposit. You say you'll work out for 20 minutes and you do it. Another deposit. You say you won't procrastinate and you keep your word. That deposit is even bigger. Over time, those small deposits add up. And one day, you realize you no longer have to try to believe in yourself. You believe because you've proven it, not with words, but with actions. And here's the question I want you to pause and think about. Are you treating yourself like someone you can trust or like someone you can't rely on? Because the truth is, your life will not be built from what you promise. It will be built from what you keep. And when you begin to understand that, every disciplined action is an act of self-respect, you won't feel like you're sacrificing anymore. You'll feel like you're building. And when you build long enough, you become the kind of person you respect. But there's something most people still don't realize, pause. Even when you understand discipline is self-respect, you can still keep breaking yourself every day for one simple reason, which we're about to talk about next. Principle 2, every broken promise weakens your trust in yourself. I want you to notice something very subtle, but extremely dangerous. It's not big failures that destroy you. It's not a single bad decision. It's the times you break your promises to yourself over and over every day. It's not loud. No one sees it. No one judges you, but it happens quietly, constantly, and it accumulates. You say, I'll start, but you don't start. You say, I'll stop, but you keep going. You say, this time will be different, but then it's no different at all. And every time that happens, a tiny crack appears in your trust in yourself. At first, you don't notice. You think, it's okay, I'll try again tomorrow. But the problem is, tomorrow looks just like today, and then those cracks begin to connect. They form a question you don't want to face. Am I really someone who does what I say? That's a dangerous question. Because when you start to doubt the answer, everything else in your life starts to shake. You don't dare set big goals because you don't believe you'll follow through. You don't dare commit because you're afraid you'll quit halfway. You don't dare trust yourself because you've broken your word too many times. And here's what most people don't understand. Lack of discipline is not the biggest problem. Losing trust in yourself is the real problem. When you no longer trust yourself, you start living a smaller life. You choose safety. You avoid challenges. You accept mediocrity, not because you lack ability, but because you don't believe you'll go all the way. I want you to think again. Have you ever felt tired, not because you have too much work, but because in your mind there's always an unfinished conversation? One voice says, you should do this. Another replies, later. One voice says, you know this matters. Another says, not today. That is the cost of breaking promises to yourself. You don't just lose action. You create an internal battle, and that battle drains your energy every day. That's why some people look very busy, but don't move forward. They don't lack time. They don't lack opportunities. They're just stuck in their own lack of self-trust. But I want you to hear this clearly. That trust is not gone forever. It's just weakened. And if it can be broken, it can also be rebuilt. Not with big promises, not with perfect plans, but with small actions that are kept. You don't need to change your whole life in one day. You just need to stop breaking yourself every day. Start with one thing, just one thing. You say you'll do it and you do it, no matter how small, even if no one sees, even if no one cares, because what matters is not whether the action is big or small. It's that you are sending a new message inward. I say and I do, and when you repeat that long enough, something strange happens. You begin to feel stronger, calmer, more confident, not because life gets easier, but because you've become someone you can rely on. And I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, if you can't trust yourself, then what foundation are you building your life on? Because in the end, everything you want, success, freedom, peace, requires one thing as a foundation, a person who keeps their word. And that person is you. But there's something even deeper that most people have never realized. Even when you start keeping your word, you can still stay stuck if you don't truly understand the relationship you have with yourself. Principle 3, you are in a relationship with yourself. I want you to look at discipline from a completely different angle, not as a skill, not as a habit, but as a relationship you cannot leave, cannot pause, cannot replace. You can change jobs, you can leave a city, you can walk away from a relationship with someone else, but you cannot leave yourself. You wake up with yourself every morning. You carry yourself into every decision. You face yourself every night before you sleep. And what matters is this: the quality of that relationship determines the quality of your life. Think about any relationship in your life. If the other person constantly breaks promises, constantly says but doesn't do, constantly avoids responsibility, how would you feel? You would start to lose patience, lose trust, and eventually you would stop expecting anything from them. Now turn back to yourself. Are you treating yourself that way? Are you making promises and not following through? Are you starting and then quitting halfway? Are you avoiding things you clearly know are important? If the answer is yes, then your problem is not a lack of discipline. Your problem is a damaged relationship. And here is the danger. Pause. When your relationship with yourself is damaged, you start living like someone you don't trust. You say one thing and do another. You want one thing, but your actions go in a different direction. You feel like there are two people inside you, one who knows what's right, and one who keeps delaying it. This conflict is the source of a lot of stress in life, not because life is too hard, but because you are not aligned with yourself. You are not just tired from work, you are tired from carrying an internal argument every day. One part of you says, do it. Another part says, later, and you get stuck in between. That is why some people, even without much pressure, still feel exhausted, because their energy is being drained not by action, but by hesitation. But I want you to see something very important. Discipline is not how you force yourself to change. Discipline is how you repair your relationship with yourself. Every action you follow through on is a step of healing. Every time you do what you said is a moment of restoring respect. You don't need to do anything big. You just need to be consistent. Like any relationship, trust is not built through big moments. It is built through small actions repeated. You don't need to prove anything to the world. You just need to prove to yourself that I can rely on myself. And when you start doing that, something very interesting happens. You no longer have to struggle as much. You don't need to convince yourself to act. You don't need to force yourself to do the right thing. Because now, you and yourself are on the same side. No more war. No more conflict. Just clarity. You say and you do. You decide and you act. That is when life starts to feel lighter. Not because things get easier, but because you are no longer fighting yourself. And I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, if you keep treating yourself the way you are now, what will this relationship become in 5 years? A trustworthy relationship or one full of disappointment? Because you cannot build a strong life on a weak relationship with yourself. But there is something many people still don't understand. Even when you begin to repair this relationship, there will still be moments when you want to quit. Moments when no one is watching. Moments when you think, no one will know. And those moments are exactly where your true character is formed. Principle 4, discipline is built when nobody is watching. I want you to imagine a very specific moment, 5:30 a.m. The room is still dark. The bed is warm. No one else is awake with you. The alarm goes off. And in that moment, there is no audience, no praise, no external pressure. Just one simple question. Do you do what you said or not? This is where real discipline begins. Not on a stage, not when you are seen, but in small moments, silent, unseen. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is big actions, strong decisions, obvious changes. But I will tell you the truth. What the world sees is not where discipline is created. It is only where discipline is revealed. An athlete standing on a podium, that is not when they became disciplined. An entrepreneur achieving success, that is not when they built discipline. Those moments are just results. Discipline is built elsewhere. In the mornings, no one sees you wake up. In the hours, no one checks your work. In the moments you could easily skip and no one would know. That is where your real character is formed. Because there, you cannot rely on recognition. You cannot rely on pressure. You cannot rely on other people's eyes. You can only rely on yourself. And here's something very important I want you to understand. If you need someone to see you to do the right thing, then you do not truly have discipline. You are just borrowing motivation from the outside, and that motivation will disappear because real life does not have many audiences. Most of the most important things you do will happen in silence. No one knows you read 10 more pages. No one knows you worked 1 extra hour. No one knows you chose silence instead of reacting. But you know, and that is enough. The people you see succeed are not the ones who perform best with an audience. They are the ones most consistent when no one is watching. They do not depend on emotions. They do not depend on circumstances. They depend only on the standards they set for themselves. And over time, that consistency builds into strength. A kind of strength others can feel, but cannot explain. That is why some people walk into a room and you can sense their steadiness. Not because of what they say, but because of who they are, and they became that person in moments no one ever saw. I want you to pause and ask yourself, how are you living when no one is watching? Do you still hold your standards? Pause. Or are you only right when someone is observing? Because the truth is, your real self is not what you show the world. It is what you do when you think no one is watching. And if you start respecting those moments, you will start building a foundation no one can take away. Not in a day, not in a week, but in hundreds, thousands of small choices. But there is something most people don't realize. Even when you understand this, there is still a kind of pain so quiet that it can destroy everything you are trying to build. A kind of pain you cannot see, but you feel it every day. Principle 5, the pain of knowing but not doing. I want to tell you about a kind of pain that most people have experienced, but very few can name. It is not a big failure, not a crisis, not an obvious fall. It is much quieter. It is the feeling when you know exactly what you should do, but you do not do it. You wake up in the morning and you know you should start that task today. You sit at your desk and you know what matters most. You look at your life and you clearly know what needs to change. But then you delay, you avoid, You tell yourself later, and maybe you think, it's okay, it's just one day. But the problem is, it is never just one day. It becomes a chain of days. And then something very strange happens. You don't just feel guilty. You start to feel heavy. A heaviness you cannot clearly explain. You wake up without energy. You get irritated by small things. You gradually lose interest in things that once mattered. Not because life is too hard, but because inside you there is a conflict. One part of you knows what's right. Another part keeps refusing to do it. And you are stuck between two versions of yourself. This is the cost of knowing but not doing. It is not loud. No one sees it. But it erodes you day by day. Every time you say, I will do it, and then don't, a small crack appears in your self-trust. At first, you ignore it. But over time, those cracks build up. And then a question begins to appear. Can I trust myself? That is a dangerous question. Because when you start doubting yourself, you start shrinking your life. You don't dare set big goals. You don't dare pursue difficult things. You don't dare step out of your comfort zone. Not because you are not capable, but because you are not sure you will follow through. I want you to understand something very clearly. This pain does not go away by thinking more, does not go away by reading more, does not go away by waiting for the right time. It only goes away when you act, not perfect action. Not big action, just action. Even if you do it imperfectly, even if no one sees, even if you are not sure you are doing it right. The moment you start, the conflict inside you begins to quiet down. The moment you act, you send a new signal inward. I am no longer someone who only knows, I am someone who does. And that changes everything. You do not have to complete everything in one day. You just need to stop not starting. Pick one thing, just one thing you have been delaying for too long. And do it this week. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be impressive. It just needs to be done. Because what you are building is not the result. It is a new version of yourself, someone who no longer avoids what they know is right. And I want you to pause and ask yourself, what in your life do you clearly know you need to do, but are still delaying? Because that answer is exactly where your life begins to change. But here is what most people still don't understand. Even when you start taking action, you can still fall back into old patterns if you do not understand one important thing. What is truly the cure for this problem? Principle 6. Action is the only way. I want you to listen carefully to this. You cannot think your way out of procrastination. You cannot understand enough to change. And you definitely cannot wait for motivation before you start. Because the truth is, motivation does not come before action. It comes after. But most people do the opposite. They wait to feel ready. They wait for motivation. They wait for the right time. And while they wait, their life stays still. I have seen this happen too many times. Someone knows they need to change their job, but they wait for the right time. Someone knows they need to improve their health, but they wait until next week to start. Someone knows they need to focus on their goals, but they wait until they feel motivated. And you know what happens? Nothing happens. Because the perfect moment does not exist. The only thing that exists is the moment you decide to act. I want you to understand something very important. Action does not just change results. Action changes your state. When you procrastinate, you feel heavy. When you start, you feel lighter. Pause. When you avoid, you feel tense. When you act, you feel clearer. Not because the problem disappears, but because you are no longer resisting it. Here is something very few people realize. The fatigue you feel does not come from doing too much. It comes from not doing what you know you should do. That heavy feeling is not because life is too hard. It comes from carrying a list of things you have been avoiding. And every day you do not act, that list gets longer until it becomes a burden. But the moment you start doing one thing, even something very small, something changes immediately. Not your whole life, but how you feel about yourself. You are no longer someone who will do. You become someone who is doing, and that shift is everything. I am not asking you to change your entire life in one day. I am asking you to do one thing. Stop delaying the start. Pick one thing you have avoided for too long, and do it, even if you don't feel like it. Even if you are not sure. Even if you don't feel ready. Because here is the secret. You will never feel ready until you begin. Action creates clarity. Action creates motivation. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. And when you repeat this enough times, something very powerful happens. You are no longer controlled by your emotions. You no longer need to feel good to act. You act because you decided, And that is when you begin to truly own discipline. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are you waiting for to begin? Because whatever you are waiting for, it is not the answer. The answer is action, always action. But when you start taking action, a new question appears. All these things I am doing, where are they actually taking me? And the answer to that question will completely change how you see discipline. Principle 7, discipline is loyalty to your future. I want you to try something, not thinking about today, not about this week, but 10 years from now. Imagine a version of yourself in the future, a version that has achieved what you want. They are healthier, more focused, more disciplined. They have a better job, better relationships, a life that you are currently moving toward. See that person clearly. The way they stand, the way they speak, the way they think. They are not a vague dream. They are a possibility waiting to be built. And now I want you to ask one important question. What does that version need you to do today? Because here is what most people do not understand. Your future self will not just appear. They will not arrive one day. They will not be given to you. They are built day by day, choice by choice, small action by small action that no one sees. Every time you wake up on time, you are doing it for them. Every time you choose the hard thing instead of the easy one, you are doing it for them. Every time you keep your word to yourself, you are sending a message to the future. I am preparing for you. And over time, those messages accumulate. They form a person, a disciplined person, a reliable person, a person you will become. But there is a truth you need to face. There is not just one version of your future. There are two. One version you want to become, and one version you are unintentionally creating. Every time you procrastinate, you are building the second version. Every time you choose what is easy, you are sending a different message. No need to try. No need for discipline. No need to change. And over time, that version will also appear. Not because you want it, but because you created it. This is what makes every day important. Every day is a vote. Every action is a decision. You are voting for the person you will become. Not once, but hundreds, thousands of times. And those votes will eventually form an identity that will become your life. I do not want you to feel pressure from this. I want you to feel power, because it means you are not stuck. You are not limited by your past. You are building your future right now. You do not need to change everything. You do not need to be perfect. You just need to start voting in the right direction. One right choice, then another, and another. That is how you build a completely new person. I want you to pause and ask yourself, if your future self could see you today, would they feel proud or disappointed? Because in the end, you are not just living for the present. You are living for the person you will become. And discipline is no longer an obligation. It becomes an act of loyalty, a quiet commitment that says, I will not betray the person I can become. But there is something even deeper. Even when you understand that each day is a vote, you can still underestimate small choices. You can still think, just this once it's fine. And that thought is what determines who you become. Pause. Principle 8. Every day is a vote for who you become. I want you to see your life in a very different way. Not as a series of passing days, not as things you have to do, but as an election. Every day you wake up, the ballot opens. And every action you take or don't take is a vote. You wake up on time, a vote for the disciplined version. You delay 30 more minutes, a vote for the easygoing version. You focus on work, a vote for growth. You scroll your phone mindlessly, a vote for stagnation. There is no neutral action. You are always voting. And here is what matters. You do not become someone because of one big decision. You become that person through hundreds, thousands of small votes. Every day you choose, you are shaping your identity. This is where many people go wrong. They think, it's just one time. It's okay to skip today. I'll restart tomorrow. And they are right, one time does not change your life. But the problem is, it is rarely just one time. One becomes two, two becomes 10, and before you realize it, it becomes a habit that shapes who you are. I want you to understand this clearly. Discipline is not perfection. You do not need to always be right. You do not need to never fail. But you need to understand this. Every choice has weight. Every choice accumulates. You do not need to change everything immediately. You just need to change the direction of your votes. If yesterday you procrastinated 10 times, today you procrastinate 9 times. If yesterday you skipped your workout, today you work out for 10 minutes. That is how you start reversing direction. Not with a big leap, but by stacking the right votes. And over time, those votes create a trend. The trend creates identity. Identity creates your life. That is how everything works. Not loudly, not quickly, but inevitably. I want you to pause and ask yourself, today who did you vote for? Not who you want to become, but who you are becoming through your actions. Because in the end, you are not what you say. You are the sum of what you do repeatedly. And if you start seeing each day as a vote, you will stop underestimating small choices. You will understand. No action is insignificant. Everything is shaping you. But there is something most people still do not realize. Even when you understand that each day is a vote, you can still lose control. You can still fall back into old habits. For one very simple reason, you are depending on something that is the most unstable thing in your life. Principle 9, discipline is not about motivation. I want you to be a little honest with yourself. How many times have you said, today I'm not motivated, today I'm not in the mood, today I don't feel like doing it, and then you don't do it? It sounds reasonable, but here's the problem. If your life depends on your emotions, then you are giving control to something that changes every day. Some days you feel excited, some days you feel bored, some days you are full of energy, some days you just want to quit. Emotions are unstable. They go up and down constantly. And if you only act when you feel good, you will only move forward when things are easy. But real life does not work that way. The most important days are often the days you don't feel like doing anything, the days you are tired, the days you doubt yourself, the days you see no results. And in those days, your true self is decided. I want you to understand something very important. Discipline is not doing it when you feel motivated. Discipline is doing it even when you don't. That is the difference. Because if you need emotion to start, you will always have to wait. And if you always have to wait, you will never be consistent. I have seen so many people stuck here. They have goals, they have plans, they have ability, but they lack one thing, the ability to act when they don't feel like it. They only act when it feels right, and the result is they never do it long enough to see results. I want you to try looking at it this way. Emotions are signals, not commands. You can feel tired and still act. You can feel bored and still continue. You can feel unready and still begin. You don't need your emotions to agree with you. You just need to decide. And when you start acting regardless of emotion, something very interesting happens. Your emotions begin to change with your actions. You start to feel better after you begin. You start to gain energy while you are doing it. You start to feel motivated when you see progress, not before. That is why I always say, you don't need motivation to start. You need action to create motivation. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you waiting for emotion or are you creating results? Because those two cannot exist at the same time. If you wait, you stay still. If you act, you move forward. It is that simple. Pause. But there is something deeper. Even when you start acting without depending on emotion, you can still fall back into old habits. You can still lose momentum. Not because you are weak, but because you have not yet understood how discipline is truly built at a deeper level. Principle 10. You build identity through repetition. I want you to understand something most people overlook. You do not become a disciplined person because of one decision. You do not become a strong person because of one day of effort. And you definitely do not change your life because of one moment of inspiration. You become who you are by what you repeat every day, every choice, every small action. Repeat, repeat, repeat. This is how identity is built. Not by what you say, not by what you intend, but by what you do so many times that it becomes who you are. You do not try to become disciplined. You become disciplined when you repeat disciplined actions long enough. You do not try to become focused. You become focused when you consistently choose focus. Identity is not something you choose once. It is something you build every day. And this is where everything becomes clear. You do not need to change everything. You just need to choose one right action and repeat it. Then repeat it again and again. At first it will be hard. You will have to think. You will have to remind yourself. You will have to try. But over time it becomes natural. You no longer have to force yourself. You no longer have to struggle. Because at that point, it is no longer an action. It is who you are. I want you to look at your current life. What you are doing every day is creating an identity. You may not notice it, but it is happening. If you procrastinate every day, you are building the identity of someone who procrastinates. If you avoid things every day, you are becoming someone who avoids. If you choose discipline every day, you are becoming a disciplined person. There is no middle ground. You are always becoming someone. And what matters is this: that identity will determine your life, not your goals, not your plans, but who you become, because who you are will determine what you do, and what you do will determine what you achieve. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, if you keep repeating your current actions, who will you become in 5 years? Because that answer is not in the future. It is in what you are doing today. This is the true power of discipline. It does not just help you achieve goals. It helps you become a new person, a person you no longer have to try to be, because you have built them day by day. And when you look back, you will realize there was no magical moment, no sudden turning point, only small choices repeated long enough that created your entire life. So I want to leave you with one final question. What are you repeating every day? Because that is the answer to who you will become. You and I both have a gift, not money, not opportunity, but today, one more day to choose, one more day to act, one more day to build the person you want to become. Discipline is not something distant. It is not a perfect version of you somewhere in the future. It is what you do right after this video ends. It is whether you stand up and begin or delay one more time. It is whether you keep your word to yourself or continue breaking that trust. No one can do this for you. Not me, not anyone else, only you. And the beautiful thing is, you do not have to do everything. You just have to start. One small action, one right choice, one promise kept. Then tomorrow do it again. That is how you build discipline. That is how you build trust. That is how you build a life. If you found this video valuable, press like so more people can see it. Subscribe to the Jim Rohn Treasures channel so you don't miss deeper lessons on discipline, habits, and success. And I want to ask you one question. Out of the 10 principles today, which one will you start applying first? Leave it in the comments. I want to read your answer. You have the power to choose how you live each day, and today's choices will shape your life. I will see you in the next video. Pause